starting slowly. We know that there are problems, traffic problems. Some participants are on the way. I am director of public analysis at the Ministry of Digitization, Administration Digitization. I have the honor to welcome you to the debate on personal data protection. This is yet a subsequent debate organized by Minister Boni, but this is very special. We have the honor to host Mrs. Viviane Reding, Vice Chairman of European Commission, Commissioner for Justice, Fundamental Rights and Citizenship. Effective protection of personal data is one of the most significant challenges in Europe, and we are aware of this. Works are on the way on the regulation that is to adopt this regulation to digital world. As I already mentioned, we are discussing personal data on weekly meetings with experts at the ministry. Also, we discuss it in a wider forum that is internet, dialogue of business, internet, social experts on the essence of internet. It is our concern to reach ever wider circles. It is very important that today we are at Warsaw School of Economics, where we have students in the audience, since this topic is of particular interest for them. Before we start the discussion on personal data protection, let me invite to take the floor President of Warsaw School of Economics. I am very honored to host this debate. We live in a global times, in new world order, where a regional center, geographic center, even intellectual center, it can be pushed to the peripheries. This Warsaw School of Economics is open to ideas, thoughts, reflections, and it is our objective to hinder this kind of globalization. So this topic is closely related with our mission. Public sector had worse notes lately. Nevertheless, they provide topics that can be met nowhere else. I am very much curious to listen to the debate and welcome and thank you for developing atmosphere and reputation of this place. Thank you very much. We asked Beata Staszyńska and Onno Hansen to run the debate. Beata Staszyńska is a director on functionalities of internet, and they will be discussing digital identity based on dynamics. Thank you very much for this short introduction. We would like to show how we implement our educational projects. We believe that media education, particularly on the today, an approach to personal data is very significant. I would like...
I hope there will not be a problem because you got translation, hopefully. We will go very soon to a video as an introduction to what we do, and then we go to a presentation on the subject we have today.
Digital identity and dynamic identity versus dynamic identity. Who, what for, why? What is it about? Basis of concept of dynamic identity is that the data online are important. These are the data we share on the internet, and these are the data that others place on internet concerning us. These data create our digital identity.
Dlaczego to ma być ważne dla mnie?
Why is it important? What does it mean?
Dla ciebie?
What does it mean for you? What does it mean for you and you? What does it mean for us?
To mnie nie interesuje.
I am not interested in this.
A to wiem.
I am interested in
Nie chcę
this.
tego wiedzieć.
I know it, I don't want to know it.
Piszę.
I am
Oglądam.
writing, I am watching, I'm seeing, I'm listening, I'm on the
Mam
chat.
bloga.
I have a blog.
Robię filmy, robię
I
zdjęcia.
am making movies, videos.
Czy to jest prawda?
Is
Czy
it
to jest
true?
etyczne?
Is it ethical?
Kto ma wiedzieć, kim jestem?
Kiedy ktoś jest
Who
przyjacielem
should know
online?
who I am?
Kto mnie czyta?
When I am
można wszystko
getting
publikować?
connected with online friend, who's reading me, who's seeing it? We are hearing, we are asking. Approach with a detachment, whatever you hear, see, ask questions yourself, and when you tell something to others, think what you are
Jak mam to
talking and
rozumieć?
Jak
how
mam
shall
to
I understand
interpretować?
this? How shall I interpret this?
Wolność słowa.
Wolność.
Freedom of speech, freedom.
Dodaję komentarz.
I am
Taguję.
adding a commentary, I am chatting,
Udostępniam,
I am
publikuję.
allowing
Czytuję.
access, I am
Lubię to.
quoting, I'm liking it on
Kim ja
Facebook.
jestem?
Who am I?
Let's imagine a situation that there's a hurricane coming up. There's a big problem in that moment because we need to alert people what to do in that moment. How do we do that? Well, we have the traditional channels like TV, like radio, like internet. But when we use those, we got one message for everybody. The problem with that is we want to diversify our messages. We want to reach different people with different messages. With traditional means of communication, it's a very hard thing to do. But by modern means, it's easier. But in order to do so, we need to know more of the people we try to target. It's not enough just to know where they live. It's also very important to know, for instance, if they are in medical needs, if they are poverty, if they have any different sort of needs that we need to attend while the hurricane comes in. And there may be people who will be volunteering. So we need as many data as we can to diversify our message. And that's a very important thing, that big data in itself, like just knowing where people are or just knowing that the statistical general is somewhere, is not enough. We need to go closer to be able to communicate with people. And it means that we need personal data also to communicate with others. We need to diversify, we need to come closer. And if we do that, we can have, for instance, completely different SMSs to different audiences, or we can have personal contact even. That's just in the sort of run-up to the hurricane, but also during and afterwards. It's very important that we have diversified contact with people. And the reason for that is that we don't want to have an image that is very general. What we want to have is a personalized image. And that's where the personal data come in. Personal data link us to situations. If we don't know who is on the picture, we see somebody. But the moment we have personal data on that person, we know this is you. And the same thing, if somebody walks on the street and we see a camera, we don't know who it is. But the moment we have personal data, we know who it is. So the importance of personal data is it links us to situations unequivocally. And that sense very positive, but also could be a harsh thing. Well, how does it function? First, we got events. And we are linked by means of our personal data to these events. It makes us non-anonymous. It makes us identifiable. If we have more events, then this moment we create a digital footprint that can be interpreted. And the moment it gets interpreted, we got profiling. Profiling is like a filter to the reality. And this filter to reality can be both a personalization, but it can also be a blockade. We can exclude or we can include. So let's start to a more difficult example When the Boston bombing took place, a lot of people on the internet started looking themselves for people who did that, who was responsible for that. And some people found a person who they thought that did it. One girl thought she recognized a guy who was in her class, and she identified him. Then there was a hunt for his personal data, and the moment the personal data were published, his profile page on Facebook was severely attacked. People were looking for him. At his parents' house, TV cameras were positioned. And unfortunately, in the end, it turned out it wasn't the guy, it wasn't him. But he had a severe depression, and later on, he was found not alive, and probably the pressure became too much. It's a very extreme example of how personal data can be misused. So we got a playing field in which we can help or in which we can threaten by means of knowing who somebody is, by means of identification. And of course, we all can imagine a situation where we are helpless on the street and we need medical help. Then it's great that somebody knows our personal data, knows our allergies, and can help us without harming us. Also, it's possible, of course, because of personalization, that we get discounts. But there are also situations in which we have to pay more because we're profiled as people who want to pay more for products, for the same products. The same is for, you can be led into a certain situation, you can be invited to be in, or you can be shut out because you're not interesting enough, or you're not young and not old enough, for instance. And also, you get a sort of filtered view of reality, which comes closer to your personal interests, which gives you more of what you like and what you want, but it also can prevent you from seeing other opinions and other options. So we have a mixed bag. And we got some questions in the end.
Myślimy, że jesteśmy w gronie, gdzie wiele osób.
We think that we are a circle.
We are that we have the law which regulates this, but we think when we want to answer the question whether everybody can use its personal data, whether someone can decide about somebody's identity, who this person is, or how much should be paid, whether people have they've got the right to include or exclude. We are not maybe answering this question today. We are also online. You can see us online. This is not one answer to this question, but what is very important is that we are invited by, we are hosting the Commissioner, Ms. Reding, and the invitation of ministers, so you are kindly invited to take the floor, to take part in this debate. And we would like to ask the Vice President of the European Commission for short comments to today's debate. Big applauding. Oh, I hear very badly. I mean, ja niestety nie znam języka.
Do you hear now? Yes, now you do hear. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, Director, dear colleague, Minister, I think it is the right place to discuss data protection. It is the right place because it is a big country, a very sensitive country, and the whole world knows that you have gone to the street some months ago in order to preserve personal data, in order to preserve civil liberties. And it is not by chance that the minister had decided not to get the new legislation done top-down, but bottom-up, discussing with the people. And I think the minister is absolutely right to do that. And I thank him for giving me the opportunity to be here today. Now, the protection of data is a very European thing. It is linked to our cultures. We have been under the domination of dictatorships from left and from right, and from there on our citizens doubt if the authorities or the administrations or the companies, the economy, treat our data as they should. That means the citizens do not trust anymore that the data is treated rightly so. And politics has answered to this in the European laws. Data protection is one of the rare situations where you have the Charter of Fundamental Rights in Article 8 writes down that every European citizen has its right to a protected data, and the treaty, which says what politics should do, what kind of laws we should do, agrees with this, and gives the instruction to the European Union to make the laws in order to protect data in Article 16. So Europe is one of the few places in the world where data protection has become a legal obligation, and this since 1995. So we do have European law on data protection since 1995, but 1995, that was another time in history. The creator of Facebook was 11 years old, Google didn't exist, and the mobile phones of that time you only can see in museums today. So it is very clear that although the rules and the values inscribed in the 1995 directive are still valuable today, at any rate you need to adapt these laws to today's world. And why and what are we doing? Well, first, we answer to the worry of the people. 92% of Europeans are concerned about mobile apps collecting their data without consent. And 89% of people say they would like to know when their data are sold to third parties. And they would like to get an option to agree or to disagree. Now, all this is already inscribed in the 1995 rules. There is no option just to take the data of a person. You have to ask the person. But is this done in reality? We are not sure. And that is why we need to adapt the new rules to the internet world. There has to be a consent, an explicit consent. So you see, we do not present new rules. We just present an evolution of the old rules. But the rules today have to be reliable, consistently applied, data processing to be safer, cheaper, and to inspire the confidence people don't know and don't have today. Because if people have confidence, then they will give out their data. And only if people give out their data in full trust can the digital world function. And we need a digital world to function. We need a real digital economy to go on in Europe. And there we get a problem again. Because the data rules of 1995 were a legislation with 34 articles. So very small legislation. Do you know what the member states did with it? Well, in Germany, for instance, they made a law with 63 sections. 33 articles became 63 sections with so many articles into it. Now multiply this by 27, and that shows you that we have a very fragmented, heavily organized world with a lot of red tape and a huge regulatory complexity. That makes it difficult, most of all for startups, to utilize the whole of the territory, because there is a mountain of paper they have to fill in, they have to obey to, they have to change the rules when they go to a different country. That doesn't make sense. And that is the reason why we want to scrap the whole thing. One continent, one rule, one data protection authority. That is what we want to have in the future, instead of complexity, simplicity. And these rules will be the same for everybody. Because I had heard very often from European companies that there was no level playing field, that there was no legal certainty, that they had to apply the rules and other competitors came in and didn't apply the rules. So in the future, that will be different. Any company which wants to operate on the soil of the European continent and addresses itself to European citizens has to apply European rules. The European market with 500 million citizens, with 500 million consumers is an interesting one. Now, if you want to utilize this one, then also stick to the rules of this market. And that brings me then to the other element, which is very important. Citizens have to know that the companies to whom they entrust their data play by the rules. Rules that reflect the fact that data protection is and will stay a fundamental right. And if you have a continent of 500 million citizens with very strong standards, well, you can be sure that those standards slowly and slowly will become world standards. So there are several elements here coming together. The values of the Europeans enshrined in the Fundamental Rights Charter and in the treaties, the protection of the individuals and the opening of the market. Those three do not exclude each other. Those three are inclusive. They work together, and that is what our data protection rules are about. The Parliament in this moment is fighting with 5,000 amendments. It tries to bring this into a votable series of amendments so that it can go ahead with the new rules before summer. On the 6th of June, we will, as ministers and commissioners, sit together in Luxembourg, by the way, in order to see how the Council is going to make out of complexity simplicity. And then the two institutions, the Parliament and the Council, will have to come to terms, and I hope that by the end of the year we will have a new regulation in place.
Bardzo dziękujemy, Pani Wiceprzewodnicząca, za głos.
Before we give the floor to Mr. Minister, we would like to hear what people from Warsaw they say about the protection of their personal data. So the digital identity, taking the opportunity of this debate, we would like to ask the people from Warsaw what they think about the protection of personal. How often do you use internet? It's very hard to say, but I think that this is a major part of my everyday life. I think 8 hours per day. This is Facebook and others daily. 2 hours and a half, 5 to 6 hours, maybe more. 1 hour maximum, 1.5 maximum. Do you feel safe in internet? No, I don't feel safe. When you use internet, do you use the internet websites which need the registration and giving the personal data? Yes, of course. Facebook, Allegro, electronic mail, Allegro, Facebook, mainly electronic mail. How do you decide which service is safe and which is not safe? I think that the popularity of a given internet social website is kind of indicator whether it is safe to use it or not. I'm not using kind of very risky websites. Aren't you afraid of giving your personal data? Yes, I am afraid. I am worried and concerned. I wouldn't want to do it from the very beginning, but now it is very necessary that we have to log in and give our personal data, and it is not safe because we reveal our personal data, and sometimes people require like address or the telephone number, such data. So I cannot buy something if I am not giving such data. I'm not logging in through Facebook because I'm not trusting this function because I reveal my personal data. So if you would like to enter a website, you have to register yourself. So I think it's a waste of time, and it's not good to disseminate our personal data. If you can think about your digital identity, how you can protect it, what would you do to protect it to a wider extent? I wouldn't visit websites. For sure, I will be for the limitation of the access to the personal data, which refer personally me. What would you like to do to reinforce the legal framework of the personal data? I think that we should protect personal data, and we shouldn't reveal them to everybody. So to a certain extent, this protection, of course, is needed. I am against any rules coming from the top, because everybody is responsible for himself, herself. I think how it will work in practice, I think that the idea is good. There is no other way. Internet is so popular that no regulations will not change it. So if we cannot protect ourselves, no one can protect us. So we can see that the digital identity, I think for one, it is a chance, for the others is a risk. What we will reveal in future and what we will protect, that's the question to be answered. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister.
We would like to ask you, Mr. Minister, what are key points in the debate on thinking of personal data protection, and what is Poland's function? Honored Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to today's debate. Let me greet General Inspector of Protection Data, Mr. Minister, important members of European Parliament, all those of you, ladies and gentlemen, that I had a chance to meet on our annual meetings on what internet is changing in our lives and how we can look for solutions that on one hand would be practical, on the other would develop a sense of freedom and safety on the internet. I believe that it is very important for this debate on data protection to be based on 4 basic fundamentals. First is understanding of the context and reality that we are functioning in with regard to radically dynamic changes introduced by internet into our life. Data processing, even the data that it was never profitable to process through developing proper analytical models, provides not only business with more extensive opportunities to reach, develop a custom-made offer, but also public bodies to make custom-made services. Data processing is, in a certain sense, obvious. On the other hand, we must be aware that on today's internet, our digital identity, being the topic of today's debate, is the identity that reveals our emotions, our feelings. It happens to be conscious, and sometimes it is unconscious. While we are surfing on the internet, we provide information about our interests to these who provide services, who target services at us. We are leaving our footprints, so to speak. We share the network with others, with those whom we like, but we are being observed by these who we do not like, or even by those that we do not know that they exist. Representatives of the companies who are thinking what kind of services to offer. All these proves that we are facing a completely new status quo. We must understand this, developing the conviction that for development of a modern economy, data processing is indispensable, while it is vital that this processing, as stressed today, is reliable. This leads to fundamental number 2 of the debate on personal data protection, namely, it has been mentioned already today, the starting point is the conviction that right of personal data protection is a fundamental right, and we must transfer this right that is functioning really to a new digital reality. So we should discuss not whether to observe this right, because this is quite obvious, but what should be circumstances we can develop foundations to process data. This is why we need this regulation that works are in course on. These regulations cannot pertain just to one country. I believe they cannot be just only one European oriented. They must be much more universal. In the sense that perhaps it will be discussed on the World Trade Organization Forum, who knows, in a few years. Since a company that works is registered in some place and is processing my data, Michał Boni, living in Poland, has to be governed by rules governing in my country, since we are in the EU, rules that are governing European Union. Thus, a key question is, and this identification of key problems is being second fundament. What is personal data? It will be dangerous for us if we will narrow this concept while we are talking about digital self. We would not be able to cope with this problem with very vast interpretation, like various footprints left in the internet, if we would not focus on a clear consensus. I am not discussing really the issues that a couple of days ago started, whether ambiguous agreement proposed by Ireland presidency is the best term. Nevertheless, this element of consent is of key significance. It refers also to profiling and justified interest. Our consent is a fundamental component. One has to remember also that implementation of this new regulation with expanded definition of personal data, with expressing consent, has to develop a balance between our sense of safety, that our data are protected, and business development opportunities, and business would like, with the consent, within legal rules for the economic development and our development process and used properly. So we must find relevant technical conditions. An important element of the second fundament is a clear definition. What are the values that we are talking while discussing personal data, and how to translate all these values onto all technical issues. Fundament number 3, good quality public debate in order to provide transparent discussions with all those who are concerned. Please pay attention. In Poland, this is one of the first cases And the inspiration from the discussion was Mrs. Chairman, Mrs. Commissioner. The discussion in the country is being on simultaneously with a member states working on this, and a parallel discussion is in the EU Parliament, since there is no proper time for this discussion. When a European solution is accepted, we will be providing implementation ramifications. If you want to be active participants, we have to formulate our position, which, due to debate with you, is being clarified directly. A couple of months ago, we have not known yet that we will be one of a few European countries, along with European Commission, who will be strongly defending a clear consent, because it is not still the concept of the majority, but I hope our arguments will convince all others. During the workshops and online consultations, during media noise in a good sense of the term, we should not oversimplify the discussion, closing it within ideological ramifications. I believe that everybody in the business who says that citizens are disturbing his business, or the other way, that each citizen who says that business is totalitarian because they want to have access to data. The role of the state is that it should be a quiet, balanced moderator, looking for some kind of self-limitation of the states, since the state should have access and process the data which it's needed. The Commissioner said how short our timetable is, thus we have to intensify our efforts, and remember that after adopting a European solution here in Poland and in any other European country, we will have to have our own schedule to implement this by the year 2016. One more element of this fundament, the issue is not only functioning regulation. You had a question on the video regulation, and so what can it change? We need to develop new awareness of our citizens and also the world of business. Awareness, understanding what is and what can be personal data protection. And now foundation number 4, let us take up this opportunity and not lose it. In one way, it will lead us to new regulation. On the other hand, it will be an incentive for a permanent developing and shaping our citizen-oriented awareness. So we have a right to express our consent in the issues that pertain to ourselves. This education, development of this awareness is of key significance if we do not want to lose this opportunity. Secondly, equilibrium between business and citizens. Business cannot be burdened with technical solutions that are not feasible to implement. So we have to look for the solution that will be really effective and simple, what has been suggested by the Commission. So we have implied protection in everything that the service providers has to prepare. Thinking about a compromise and awareness, I would like to mention one more issue. Namely, since we have a digital identity, since a foundation is protection of data and our privacy, we know that the nature of the contemporary world and economy is that we are processing data anyway. Let us agree what will be the terms for this processing. What we need in this issue is a digital social agreement. As many years ago, in various areas of life that had not been covered by new digital technologies, societies thought about equilibrium and entering into sort of agreements. This debate, due to the good energy of the European Commission and personal contribution of Mrs. Chairperson, will provide this social agreement where everybody will be a winner and there will be no losers. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for the debate mentioned by Mr. Minister and Ms. Chairwoman.
The Minister said, if we look at the big data, the sort of collection of all the data we have, and they're anonymized, in this moment we have an extreme bias. For instance, Microsoft Research found out that if we look at only at big data, we exclude people who are not included in the big data. Just imagine one situation, very simple one. In an American town, they have an application that you can put on your phone, and you have your own phone in your car. If you drive around, the application registers the amount of bumps that you pass on the road. It sounds like a brilliant invention because you sort of get a registration of potholes, and city council knows where to repair the roads. There's only one slight problem. Not everybody has a smartphone. So those people with a smartphone normally have more money. They drive their cars in their own neighborhoods mostly, which means that if they drive around, their roads get repaired earlier. People who have less money and don't have smartphones probably have the same or maybe worse quality roads, but they don't register. So public means go to the wrong end, or at least not in the most effective way. So the only thing we can avoid these biases, is everybody has their own voice in this process. And to have their voice, we need to be personally involved. But this means, and this I link now to what our speakers said, this means that we need to trust each other, which means we have to have a situation in which we can have empathy, and in which we don't try to be dogmatic, but we try to trust. And it's a very hard subject to trust. But our big question to the audience is, how can we build a situation in which we can talk with empathy?
Tutaj mam pierwszy głos, proszę.
Rafał Trzaskowski. I am a European Parliament member.
Thank Madam Commissioner for the regulation, because first of all, this is a really ambitious project, and it actually brings added value, because we will have a regulation thanks to which we will have legal certainty in 27 member states, and finally subjects from outside of the European Union will be held accountable if they break the rules of the EU. Ja chciałem parę zdań powiedzieć, dlatego że w pewnym sensie Parlament Europejski
I would like to say a couple of words, since EU Parliament was invited to take the floor in a way in latest press releases. What is most important for us, for all of us, is personal data protection. Majority of MPs, unfortunately, is thinking one-sidedly. While we have been elected by citizens, our role is balancing all pros and cons. And first of all, we have to think whether all solutions are positive. If some will not be counterproductive, the debate is being led on a couple of planes. And next, thinking about personal data protection, which is a priority for all of us, we have to act in a way so as our economy is still competitive, not to provide the conditions that will enable European business to operate. It is very difficult to find an equilibrium. We are inviting to the debate all and every party. This is open debate. We took a lesson of ACTA, and we want to have absolutely subject matter oriented. I am dealing with this topic for many months. Many European politicians are just starting and want to act to their own advantage. As for a debate in Poland, it is most important to discuss subject matter issues, not to create a climate of a danger or threat that we are trapped. If we don't have a subject matter oriented debate, we will not move forward. It's not very simple. Some terms are not very simple, like third party, business, profiling, one-stop shop, risk-based, etc. We are involving in debate main inspectors of personal data, who are one of the most active in Europe, and we wish this debate is balanced. In some cases, it is automatic not to on-pass data to third parties. As is the case of profiling, we will need more extensive debate. The most important is that we here can have a subject matter-oriented debate. Fortunately, we succeed in this. Thank you very much.
Dziękuję bardzo. Zaraz przekażemy dalej głos, natomiast ja uwiedziona też oczywiście tematem, mam taką ogromną prośbę. Prosilibyśmy o dopuszczanie głosu wielu osób, dlatego pomyśleliśmy, że ta minuta wypowiedzi byłaby dobrym pomysłem. Około godziny 11:15 musimy zakończyć to spotkanie. Zależy nam na głosach też osób, które są może po raz pierwszy w miejscu, gdzie można o tym porozmawiać. Zachęcamy Was. Tomek, przejdź tam do góry może z mikrofonem, może ktoś z osób, które naprawdę pierwszy raz są w temacie. Też zapraszamy studentów i młodych ludzi, którzy nie tylko filmowani na ulicy mogą mieć swój głos w tej sprawie. I prosimy też o tłumaczenie, bo zdaje się zniknęło. Poczekajmy chwilkę, zróbmy technicznie porządek.
Now I would like the first contributor. Could you please introduce yourself? And 1 minute, Bogdan Janoczka, this is the Warsaw School of Economics. I would like to ask about, because we think that our debate was concentrating on internet, but I heard that in the United States there was a process for being not faithful in marriage because the two mobile cells were one next to the other or the whole night, and that was the reason for the court actually to pronounce that there was this marriage unfaithfulness. So if we are in a shopping center and if we move to a certain shop, so this mobile phones are also a very important element of our privacy, not only internet. Each of us installs software on our computers. I am testing new software myself, and we have end user license agreement, and we move forward. Should it be maybe divided into smaller fragments informing us this license agreement, what are the consequences of finding software, what is the communication with data are sent, because I have an example of a company, because I'm not a promoter of this company. So if we have kind of program crash, we have text. I don't know if this text is sent because we have a report, the Microsoft Experience World crash, and this is just my comment. So I direct this question. This is the question to the Minister or to the Vice President of the European Commission. We would like also for kind of summary from the Minister's side, and Wojciech Wywirowski, the General Inspectorate of the Protection of Personal Data. I will maybe be a little bit surprising, but from the perspective of the General Inspectorate of the Protection of Personal Data in this discussion, the personal data are not the most important, and the protection is not the most important, which was emphasized in the preliminary documents of the European Commission and is still maintained by the European Commission, is the trust, which consists of safety. It means that there is no unauthorized access to the personal data, and also the trust within the meaning that no one will reveal the data that was entrusted to somebody if we entrust the information, no matter whether to the state or to the business. So this is happening in the conditions of trust. So we kind of reveal our personal secret, and the use of such data in a different way than we expected is kind of betrayal. I would maybe refer to a fragment of the debate that we were leading with certain sector of economy. I can see representatives from that sector of economy who said that in the 1995 and 1997, when the directive was being formulated and the Polish law was formulated, so they thought that their business will be killed by such law, that the law will kill the business. But the real effect was that from the market who was eliminated was those who were not trustworthy. And because there are still some objections from the business world as for the processing of the personal data, but still we have trust now on the market, because those who actually initiated certain activities like compliance with the law, so they are trustworthy. And the last comment, very special comment at the end, that if we discuss all these different issues about the data processing by business for the purpose of different economic activities, we shouldn't forget that the most important achievement of what happened with the directive from 1995 is the implementation in the member states, and the success is also that it refers to the power state, which also results. And what is intriguing for me is what are the elections to the European Parliament, and if so, we will be surprised when we have the intra-targeting process. So we will be encouraged actually to elect, to vote on the basis of the personal data that were collected about us, which were profiled to a very, very, very low level of a single voter, and this is the next breakthrough which we will witness in our country in 2017. We have other contributors to this debate, and of course you have to remember to ask also about your personal zone. So this is a chance for everybody to express his or her worries. We have Izolomir Hałącki. This is the citizens networking. I would like to say not only about the right to privacy and about the consequence of this right to privacy is the protection of personal data, but also moving from the trust issue, I would like also to mention what is very close to the privacy, to the right of the privacy. This is the right also to protect our personal data. This is the second right of a human being, and this what we are talking about should be also considered and discussed from being aware that in addition to the right of privacy, we have the other right of a human being to be informed. This matter of a trust, so which the General Inspectorate said should not divert from the other right which human being has about the right to information. So we are bipolar, and we would like actually to combine these two angles. This is a foundation. From the foundation, and thank you very much for the organizers for being for making us familiar with this topic. So this fundamental rights, it's about the control over the personal data, about our life, how we can perceive the reality through profiling and different filters. So I think that it was very interesting. It's the breakthrough in our debate, but in the same time, this is my voice what Mr. Trzaskowski said. I can see that this debate is closer to the citizens, and we can combine it with the level of the debate in Brussels, because this regulation is very, very detailed, and these details are the most important. And if we can stay as citizens on the level of very high abstraction, it will be very difficult for the state as the decision makers to translate such principle rules into the regulation. So I can see kind of a problem of the debate. So I am I'm a little bit worried as a citizen whether this debate is possible without a certain deepening, which cannot happen during such meetings as this one. And I have a question to Vice President.
I could not agree more with everything you said. I'm only concerned with one development which happens in the European Parliament and in the Council. I mean the approach based on a risk, which is winning more and more support from various sides. Could you please give us your opinion on that approach? I'm quite sure that you are familiar with it. And in particular, tell us whether it is reconcilable with your concept of harmonization and creating level playing field, but also secure legal framework for the citizens, which has to be simple by definition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see there's
Bardzo, mamy następne głosy tutaj. Może u góry, bardzo proszę.
We have another also contributor, and also Vice President, Mr. Minister Karol Kopaniek, and I am the student of the Warsaw School of Economics, and also I do some posts in internet, and I'm very happy that Mr. Minister said about building up the awareness and about also the public discussion, nationwide discussion about the protection of the digital identity. But I would like maybe to focus more on this aspect, that in February we had a meeting of Barack Obama with the top leaders of the European Union, and during that meeting what was agreed was the details of the negotiations about TTIP agreement, which will regulate the agreement on the protection of personal data, and this agreement will be between the European Union and the United States, between these two countries. And I would like to say why it should be the worldly agreement. So why only these two bodies who are actually contracting with each other? Why only these two? And why this debate on why it is done behind the closed doors? Well, because it should be the openness of our debate. Tomek, there is another also a contributor to the debate. Maciej Białąs, Minister of Economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that regardless the fact what institutions we represent, all of us should represent the common sense also. And I think that in a certain sense we forget about one thing, that we face more and more aware society. Young people that you could see in the film, they are aware, protesting against ACTA, where to a certain extent the certificate for this, that the society is interested in a legislative process. And when we discuss about the draft of the regulation, we can see certain things, certain regulations, rules, which not necessarily they can give us the desired and the positive effects. For example, the right to be forgotten. We should find kind of a balance, weighing between the protection us citizens and in the same time with the protection of business. And I remember Minister Wiewiórowski, who during the debate in the Senate said that this right to be forgotten, it will be very difficult to exercise this right, or maybe it will not be very possible. So first of all, we have to be afraid of being over-regulated, and also to remember the citizens are aware of what they are utilizing. Thank you very much.
Small remark to that. I think we have to realize that European legislation is not just about fundamental rights. It's always a weighing between fundamental rights on the one hand and economic aims on the other hand. So we have fundamental rights like data protection, and we got the aim of free flow of data. And I think this is where the compromise comes in. I think this is where we all have a responsibility to find sort of the most responsible compromise possible. And I think this we need to have in mind. There's no fundamental debate about fundamental rights. It's how to balance them against our economic aims. I saw there were more questions.
Dzień dobry. Michał Kaczorowski, Związek Pracodawców Branży Internetowej.
Michał Kaczorowski.
Dopuściłem pierwszego do głosu przedstawiciela Ministerstwa Gospodarki, który powiedział dokładnie to, co miałem powiedzieć. Także dziękuję panu.
Thank you, because my question has been already answered by representative of the Ministry of Economy. Simultaneously, I would like to appeal to all participants what has been stressed by the Minister and Ms. Commissioner, we have a very tight schedule, and we should stick really what is this third foundation, subject matter oriented debate. Because if we let our emotions go, we will not be able to develop proper awareness on neither side, citizens or businessmen. Emotional discussion always threatens with more radical positions. I am representing the sector from technology, but I am speaking here as a citizen. We are talking quite a lot about commercial aspects that businesses use information on us, profiles, commercial offers. In a sense, we can say that they make an effort to act to our goodness, but if you do not analyze these offers, it can be beneficial, but it may not. It has been earlier mentioned, I think, by Director Wiewiórowski.
Brakuje mi trochę jednak dyskusji o tej stronie, że tak powiem, państwa, czyli zabezpieczeń nas, obywateli, w stosunku do informacji, którymi dysponuje państwo, ponieważ te firmy dopiero budują informacje o nas, a państwo o rejestry publiczne posiada i potrafi z tych informacji korzystać nie zawsze w taki sposób, w jaki my żeśmy im udostępniali. Daliśmy informacje o nas jako kierowcy, jako posiadaczy samochodu,
not in the way they should. For example, they have information about us as drivers, and it can be used for penalizing us. I could give many drastic examples, not to mention access to telecommunication information. I think that we expect that we have more opportunities, we can be more successful in as far as businesses are concerned than when we deal with the state. This awareness is very important because in a way we take responsibility for what is being told about us. One more question. Włodzimierz Schmidt, Internet Employers Association. Ms. Commissioner, Mr. Minister, I am talking on behalf of internet sector, but also on behalf of Polish businessmen. I will say in a minute why on behalf of Polish businessmen. The minister started some time ago workshops and debate where organizations take part and affiliate businessmen from various walks of business. It has been proved that Polish businessmen share a voice, and the position is really consolidated. We all are for a good quality solution, self-sense solution, and protecting our identity as in internet as citizens of the EU. We are slightly concerned that there are voices written and spoken that try to reduce this debate just to emotional issues, and it has been mentioned by Rafał Trzaskowski, Member of Parliament, and we are really concerned about this because we are losing subject matter oriented issues. Speaking as a citizen, I really feel manipulated in a way when I read that we are talking about a second ACTA. It's something completely different. ACTA referred to different things. It might be this situation where someone is trying to develop a conflict between a businessman and citizenship. So do not create the situation as we remember from the communist times where the businessman was the bad boy. Many of us have founded businesses. Many of us work in these businesses, and we have to be aware that if certain regulations go too far, they can effect in what has been mentioned by the minister, namely economic recession, which will be unfavorable not only for internet business, not to mention that a number of us can lose their jobs. So if you want to reduce it to a political debate, there are opinions like that. We are really very grateful to Mr. Minister, as Polish businessman, that this debate that is on is very much subject matter oriented, that these workshops lead to good positions. I'm happy to hear the statement by Mr. Minister and then by Mr. Trzaskowski. If the regulation in its final shape, I'm not talking about the details, but about its general shape, we as Polish businessmen are very happy with it also as a Polish and EU citizenship. We have a request to limit the question to 1 minute because we would like to everybody to have an opportunity. We would like to provide time really to sum up. So please, one last question. I would like to take a floor as a citizen. My name is Jerzy Banaś. The discussion for me is the discussion about a protection of rights, individual rights in a democratic state. Thus, I would like to tell citizens, I don't want to be an element of business. I can be a business partner when I am on my intention enter a supermarket. I do not want to be element of business. So I like really element of implied protection because I have a say whether in next step those who ask for my data, whether I will rely, whether I will trust him and will allow access to this. This is one element. Thus, my request is please listen to my voice, approach it seriously. I don't want to be an element of business in any manner whatsoever. I am an individual who can, who must have a say. I don't want to be included into global projects of business development. And secondly, I'm addressing the commissioner. There is a group of people working on legal solutions, how to work on it, but there is a group of people who already think how to omit this law. And this would be a protection of personal data on servers outside the EU. How this regulation will relate to the data on our internet fora on the server that's outside the Union. How this regulation would approach this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We hope that this debate will be on.
Well, to give you an answer now in a nutshell will not be the most easy thing to do, but I will try. We start with a person, which with each individual, with each one of the 500 million, each individual has a right to its own personal data. It can do with his personal data what he or she wants. You want to give them out, you give them out. You want to keep them back, you keep them back. A company needs your data in order to work with them. You agree, you give them out. You don't agree, you keep them back. And that is where trust comes in. If we have a world where data is stolen, well, you will not entrust a company with your data. And that is why we need these rules so that people are secure, that they know I am the one who decides upon my data. And because I trust this company, I give my data out. And because I distrust this company, I keep my data back. So that is the basis of the whole rules. And this is not something new. This is already inscribed in the 1995 directive. So it is always a person who decides and not a company who decides. Do these data protection rules apply now when you are communicating with your friends? No. That is a household exception. Because you are a private individual, you can communicate with your family, with your friends, and you do not need to apply any rules on these ones. The household exception was already in the 1995 directive. It is taken over now also. What about the public sector? Well, the public sector is included in these rules because the public sector should be an example and not a horror story. I think the public sector is the first one who has to respect the right of the individual to its own data. But of course there are also the public interests. Some of them have been said in the beginning. For instance, if there is a tsunami, of course your data will be utilized in order to save the community. So the public interest in the public sector is a very important element to be concerned and preserved. It has been said before also that there is no right which is absolute. There is a right to your personal data, but there is also the right to information. So I have to clarify something here, because some people believe that the right to your personal data and the right to be forgotten would mean that, for instance, a commissioner who doesn't like what the journalists have been writing in their papers can go there and say, no, 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 right to be forgotten, you delete everything. Well, that is not the way it works. There is a right of the journalist to write. There is a right of the scientist to have its data preserved in an archive. There is a right of the researcher to work on sensitive data. So all this will continue to be. And the right of information is a right which has to be equilibrated with the right of personal data. Now, of course, a lot of this has also to do with business, because the trust of the data possessor to entrust its data to a business is important. It is also important that we leave our businesses to do their job, to develop themselves. For instance, I have done a policy now since years to help young startups to develop into big businesses, because we need that if our economy has to work. And that is why, from the business point of view, this is the biggest market opener which has been done during the last years. You get rid of unnecessary red tape. The saving for the businesses will be 2.3 billion per year, only by getting rid of the red tape. Now, to whom then do you apply the rules on the protection of personal data? You do not need to apply them to the butcher shop next door. You do not need to apply them to a small businesses which creates screws. But you need to apply it even to a very small businesses, to a very small business which is handling health data, even if it is a very small one. And that brings me to the question of the risk-based approach. Yes, we want to have a risk-based approach, because there where there is a risk, there should be a very high level of protection. And there where the risk is not existing, the butcher shop, for instance, the level of protection needs to be less. So this risk-based approach is being refined in this moment in the discussions in the Parliament. The question of United States and Europe. Well, there is a very big difference between the United States and Europe in the sense of protection of personal data. We do have laws in Europe on the protection of the individuals, and the individuals can go to court, whereas this does not exist in the United States. And that is why we do have a problem with the United States on the exchange of data. You must know that this problem has become bigger since 9/11, when everything went away from the right of the individual to the question of security. Now, so many years later, we come to a point where we try to equilibrate both. And it is not President Obama which is negotiating, but it is Viviane Reding who is negotiating with Eric Holder, the Attorney General, in order to have an agreement between the United States and Europe, an agreement which lays the foundation on how our citizens will be protected in America and in the United States. And I have asked for reciprocity, because an American on the European continent will have rights. I would like a European on the American continent to have the same rights. We have not yet arrived to a conclusion on this. And that brings me then to the question of the servers outside of the EU. Are they falling under the rules? Well, the rules have been developed in such a way that this is not a question. The question is, where are you doing business? Not is where is your mother house or where is your server? Are you addressing yourself to citizens on the European continent? Then the law applies to you. Even if your server is in Honolulu, that doesn't count. The citizens in Europe and doing business in Europe counts. And that brings me to the level playing field, which doesn't exist today. Because I had a lot of complaints of European companies who told me we do not have fair play. We have to adopt to our national laws and then to the laws of our neighbors, but we are in competition with businesses who adapt to no laws, and that can't be. That is not fair play, neither for our citizens nor for our businesses. So this regulation will change everything. It will change it in such a way that whatever the rules we collectively decide upon, they will be for everybody. Everybody who works, who operates on the soil of Europe will have to apply the same rules. Rules which protect the individual, which will give back to the individual its right to decide for its own data what will happen with this data, which will make it very clear that public authorities also fall under the rule to protect the personal data, and which will give to our companies a level playing field that wherever they go on our continent, the same rules apply to them, so that will be much less cost, very big legal certainty, and I hope for us Europeans, the opening of a space for data, so that the data of the future will be a European stamp on it. Here the data is free and protected. Both go together. And that is the way we Europeans want to have our rules and will have our rules in collaboration between the governments, the minister, and the European parliamentarians. They need to decide in the end on what we will have to have. And then I come to the last question, because I said it is the governments and the parliamentarians who decide. But this debate, I have started it in 2010. With public consultations, with expert groups coming together, with citizens being asked their input. So the debate goes since 2010. I have put in January 2012 my proposal of law on the table, and now we are spring 2013. I hope that the new law will be in application by 2015. That makes 5 years of preparation. I think that should be enough, everybody to come in.
Dziękujemy bardzo. Panie ministrze. Proszę.
Nic dodać, nic ująć.
Thank you very much, Vice President. Thank you very much for this summary. And in few words, just few comments. First of all, the fundamental right is the protection of privacy. And then thinking in what conditions the data processing and the use of data and the footprint of our privacy. This is the topic of today's debate and the discussion. I fully agree with one of the contributors of our debate, last contributor, that you don't want so that business is prying into your private life, but in order to make your wish come true and the legal facts, we have to create a legal solution guaranteeing you the right to refuse the processing of your data, and this is the essence of this issue. And I think that we can talk about it, protecting the citizens' rights, thinking in the same time how this modern internet business can evolve without any prejudices, because if you disagree for the data processing, so from the legal perspective, it will be binding, and also it will be binding in business, and everybody should accept such mechanisms, such rules. Secondly, the key, of course, is the practical solutions, which Kasia Szumilewicz has said, and what she has asked at today's debate. We talk about values, but in my opinion, only when we have this order in these values acceptable for us, then we will be looking for technical solutions which will not ruin this value order. They will have to be technologically tailored to what we would like to achieve. For example, finding the technical and legal formula in order to get the acceptance, clear acceptance, and we have to work together on this. Full consent, when we talk about the protection of the privacy and the personal data, we have to also think and exercise the rights to public information. In our Ministry of Administration and Digitization, we do a lot in order to disseminate, to make public in different institutions how they should be open, not closed, and that they should learn how to reveal different information or data of public nature which are in public domain. Also, full agreement if we talk about the protection of the personal data and the privacy. We are not talking only in relation individual business, but also individual and the state, and there should be the clear and transparent rules here that if the state holds information about that someone is a driver and has a driving license, so this is what results from a debate, so it could also be something wrong for the citizen. Something wrong could be only when this individual breaks the road rules, and it will be obvious that he will be identified as the road code breacher. So our state has to learn how to make savings in the data processing, but also we don't have such a situation that this abundance of the data and that huge totalitarian way that it will take place, which does not change this nature that in this field we should be very sensitive. And this debate is kind of a link to the further debate, and the Vice President of the European Commission has said that this is long-lasting process from the first consultation, then presenting the proposal in March 2012, and the long debate afterwards, which we think should be faster. If this is the link, so now I would like you to visit our website to read all the comments that come about this project. project to have a look at this very simple brochure that we've distributed to you, and also please participate in debates online or offline, because this debate should go on, and at the end I will say more. Even if this debate is finished, we will have regulations. Nothing will release us from the obligation that the discussion on the awareness of our rights to be protected, to protect our identity should go on. Vice President, Ms. Chairman, I would like to wish you a lot of energy and strength to continue, and we will be very faithful supporters. Thank you very much to Vice President, to the Minister.